Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I had a request from MC Jamie J to make this video, and this video is concerning moon landings in 1969. The obvious conspiracy of whether they landed on the moon or not. Personally, I don't believe that they did. I'll go through some of the things which I find rather unusual. A few discrepancies which I've found over the years when I've been looking into this. Anyway. MC Jamie J, thank you very much for your request, and this is a video especially for you, my friend. Okay, a few things I'd like to go into. Number one, when the lunar module was in orbit around the moon and was getting ready to land on the surface, they'd have used their thrusters in order to slow down the trajectory of the lunar module, the Lunar 11 module. This would make a significant amount of noise inside the module, therefore interfering with the radio communications between Earth and the lunar module. It would have been very deafening, probably around 300 decibels or more. They would not have been able to hear the radio transmission from Earth, and they would not have been able to communicate efficiently between the Earth and the Moon as regards their landing onto the Moon and their final approach. The radio transmission from the Earth to the Moon, as we all know, radio waves travel at the speed of light, okay? Very, very quick, 186,000 miles a second. But there is still a radio delay between the lunar module and the Earth, and a delay, obviously, to get that signal from the Earth back to the lunar module again. It's about a 2.56 second delay. Now, there's one thing that I really did notice on this, is that the radio transmissions between the lunar module and the Earth were almost like instantaneous. Sorry, NASA, doesn't work that way, okay? There is a distance that radio signal has to travel, and there's a distance that radio signal has to travel back to the lunar module in order for you to respond to Earth. As they were actually landing on the moon, they have a very large thruster underneath the lunar module, which obviously had to be switched on to slow their trajectory down enough so they could land safely on the moon. Obviously, if they're traveling too quickly, it would just hit the moon and they just explode and all their atoms would be thrust out into space. So, here's the problem. As the lunar module was landing and approaching the surface of the moon, they had some problems with the guidance computers and everything, so Neil Armstrong had to actually do that landing manually. He was trained to do it, obviously, yeah? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, as it was going down towards the moon, there was no dust kicked up whatsoever by the thruster from the lunar module. The dust on the moon is extremely fine. If you can imagine talcum powder, if you put a saucer on the table, fill it with talcum powder and blow it, what happens? It literally goes everywhere. It's so fine. It just takes a small breeze to move that kind of dust. Obviously, you haven't got a breeze on the moon because there's no atmosphere, there's no air, okay? We'll go into that again soon, because that's another significant thing that needs to be talked about. So as it was landing, the lunar module thrust up throughout, no dust at all. There were some very strange things about this, because the NASA actually turned around and said that there's significantly less thrust in a low gravity environment. That is absolutely rubbish. If anybody understands anything about physics and the laws of inertia, that an object in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by an outside force, the same as an object at rest will stay at rest until influenced by an outside force. This is what happens. Thrust is basically being pushed in a forward motion. That thrust is inertia. It has an effect on everything around it. If they want to turn around and tell me that thrust had no effect on the dust on the surface of the moon, I'm afraid that is the biggest fucking lie that I've ever heard in my life. And when I read this, honestly, I was smiling from ear to ear. It was so funny. Typical NASA physics just doesn't make any sense. For example, another thing, the flag on the moon. The flag was waving like this, okay? The moon has no atmosphere. There's no air on the moon. There's no air molecules to move that flag. Zero. It's impossible. It cannot happen. NASA said that they put the flag and it was like in a specific shape to look like it was waving. It wasn't, because I could actually see the movement. Very strange that the flag was moving on the moon when you've got no air on the moon to actually, no air molecules as such, because air is molecules. It pushes and uses a force again to actually move that flag, and the flag was moving. Impossible. The moon has no atmosphere. It has no air either, okay? And it's 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. So the thrust would have thrown out lots and lots of dust. When the lunar module had landed, there were three big pads, three big circular pads, about this size, yeah? The photographs that were taken of the pads after the lunar module had landed, there was no dust at all on those pads. The dust would have been everywhere. It would have covered everything. All of the pads would have been covered in dust, but yet we see no dust on the landing pads on the lunar module. Another thing they didn't really think through very carefully either. Obviously, shadows run in specific directions. On the moon, you have one light source. That is the sun. And the sun only will thrust shadows in one particular direction. Okay, you can't move the sun this way and that way to make your shadows go all over the place, NASA. It doesn't work that way. The sun is fixed. It's a fixed position. Okay, and it actually produces shadows in a very specific way and a very specific direction. Okay, all the shadows will be facing in one direction, but yet we have multiple shadows, which suggests multiple light sources. That's very strange as well. You know, where do they get their generator for their light sources? And why were there so many light sources everywhere, casting all sorts of different shadows all over the place? It doesn't work that way. Okay, the sun actually makes the shadows go in one particular direction, which would suggest to me that there were multiple light sources on the moon, and with their magic generators somewhere, actually producing all of that electricity to power those lights. Very strange. Shadows do run in specific directions, and that is the end of the story. It doesn't work any other way. The sun's fixed in position and makes shadows run in a specific direction. Also, the lunar module's shadow was different to the surrounding shadows of the rocks and the hills around it. Why would this be? Why would the sun affect the lunar module's shadow in a different way than it's affecting the rocks and the mountains and hills that are on the moon? In a different way, in a different direction. It doesn't work that way. NASA have come up with all sorts of explanations trying to explain it by NASA physics, which I'm afraid I don't recognise because it's not physics. It doesn't work that way. So that's another thing you need to be looking at there on the fake moon landings. Have a look at the shadows and see which direction they're casting, specifically one from the lunar module, which is completely different from the shadows of everything else around on the moon, the mountains, the rocks and everything else, and also the astronauts as well. They're all completely different directions. Doesn't work that way, okay? Shadows work in one particular way. There were so many different things to look at. For example, this is very important for people to understand. We have something which people need to know. It's a thing called the Van Allen radiation belt. Now, the Van Allen radiation belt is an area of radiation which is transmitted by the Earth's magnetic field lines. They run for about 36,000 miles out into space, and they are very wide as well. As you know, the Earth itself has a magnetic field that comes out in a shape like this. This magnetic field protects us from the solar radiation from the sun. It's basically from the magnetic field is generated inside the Earth. In the Earth's core, we have a solid metal core in the Earth surrounded by a liquid metal core. This liquid metal core spins around the solid metal core and causes a magnetic field to occur. This magnetic field is thrust out into space, and this is basically what the Van Allen radiation belt is. It's extremely hazardous to anybody travelling through it. And if you were to travel through this without adequate radiation shielding, i.e. you would have to have 6 feet of lead to protect you from this radiation. It is absolutely lethal to us. It would completely destroy your DNA. It would give you all sorts of cancers. You get radiation poisoning, and you wouldn't even fucking survive going through this. So this is another bit of cartoon physics from NASA. The Van Allen radiation belt is fixed. It is a constant. It doesn't move. But you have no choice but to travel through this if you want to go through the moon. You can't travel around it. We simply wouldn't have enough fuel to actually go around that and actually be successful to get to the moon, which is 330,000 kilometers away. Very long way away. 6 feet of lead shielding you would need to actually protect you from this. You cannot protect yourself. It's impossible. You just cannot do it. And the reason for this is that the Earth's magnetic field is there for a specific purpose, and it is extremely dangerous to travel through it. Also, this is another thing I found quite confusing. On the visors of the astronauts, one particular photograph that I picked out, I'm going to upload it actually. I don't think very many people picked up on it, but actually in the visor, with all the reflections and everything, there was a reflection of a light. It looked to me like a studio light. You know, the studio light comes down and it has the 4 little things, to spread the light out. If I do a quick drawing for you quickly so you can see what I mean. They look a bit like this. And they've got these things here. You have to excuse me for a second, ladies and gents. They look like this. And in the visor, it looked like that. And it looked like it was actually had a rope hanging. So, as in studio lights, they hang from the thing to actually, from the ceiling to give you a light source on your film set, on your studio. One of these were actually in the visor of one of the astronauts. Now, that's really damning evidence, and why they didn't remove this, I have no idea. I mean, I spoke about 9/11 yesterday. Oh my god, some of the stupid fucking things they did, and expect people to fucking believe that 9/11 was not a terrorist attack is unbelievable. It's the same thing with the moon landings. So this reflection in the visor of it's actually Neil Armstrong's visor. What a surprise! Was there? So it actually sort of gives me the impression that it was actually a film set. They were filming the 1969 moon landings from. Now, if you speed the footage up of the astronauts, they look as though they're going really slow and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes, they're going really, really high. They're going really high because I've noticed that one thing, there was an actual fucking wire on one of the helmets. They were being pulled up. If you actually speed that footage up by 2.5 times, 2.5 times, it would look exactly as they are walking and moving in Earth's atmosphere, normal speed. So they actually slowed that footage down to make it look as though they were in Earth, Moon's gravity, which is 1/6 of the Earth's gravity, by the way, and it made it look like that they were actually walking on the moon. When in fact, I would imagine they were just in a film studio, and they altered the speed of the film to make it look as though they were actually walking on the moon. It just appears that they're walking on Moon's gravity. Though in fact, really, if you speed that footage up by 2.5 times, they're actually walking in Earth's gravity, okay, which is 6 times the gravity of the moon, obviously, because the moon is 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. Now, another thing, which I find absolutely unbelievable, and actually, not many people have brought this up, and I've looked on the internet quite a lot. There's a couple of people that brought it up, but there's not very many. They go into the main things, which I'm going into now. But if you look at the moon from the Earth, it looks quite big. You look in the sky, it looks like this sort of thing. It looks actually quite big, because it is quite big, okay? It's roughly 1/4 the size of the Earth, so it looks quite big in the sky. Sometimes we're closer to the moon, and sometimes we're further away because we have, there's a slight distance, discrepancies in distance. There's slight distance variations because sometimes the moon's closer to us, sometimes it's further away. But normally it looks quite big in the sky. Now, looking at the Earth from the moon, from the photographs from the moon landings. The moon looks exactly the fucking same size as... Sorry, the Earth looks exactly the same size as the moon would look from the Earth. Absolutely not. You have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that the Earth is 4 times larger than the moon. So, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work this one out. If you're looking at the fucking Earth from the moon, the Earth would look 4 times larger. It would be absolutely huge, okay? You wouldn't even get it into the whole camera frame. It would be massive, but yet we see the Earth like this. Very strange. More cartoon physics from NASA. That's an impossible situation. It cannot happen like that because the Earth is actually 4 times larger than the moon. Fact. Can't get away from that, NASA. You can throw whatever answers at me you like. I'm not going to believe you because it's physics and it's fact. Okay? There's a difference in size between the moon and the Earth. There's actually 4 times difference in size. So you can't actually hide that one from me, or actually from anybody else who actually believes that the moon landings were faked, and I believe 100% they were faked. We simply didn't have the technology in 1969 to go to the moon, plus the fact we would not be able to survive going through the Van Allen radiation belt. It would be impossible. We would all fucking die. The astronauts would have died, basically. It's lethal radiation. Okay, now, one more thing. From the Earth, we have lots of very, very good telescopes, very highly advanced telescopes. We have radio telescopes, we have infrared telescopes, we have ultraviolet telescopes, and we have standard mirror reflector telescopes. We can look at the stars. Beautiful. We all like to look at the stars when we actually get a clear night, when they're not covering our skies in fucking geoengineering, that is. Anyway, we look at the stars and we see them, they're bright, they're really bright, they're reflecting through the Earth's atmosphere. We don't see them as really, really very clearly. The only way to see we do see them quite clearly, but to see the stars completely clearly, we have to get away from the Earth's atmosphere because the telescopes have to actually look through the Earth's atmosphere, which is a lot of gases there, and it's very difficult to see them very clearly. So we've got telescopes like Hubble. please, please. Oh, God. There's only so much I can take sometimes. Hubble was never even fucking there, by the way, okay? Bloody crap. So, we can see stars from the Earth, obviously, yes? Astronomers can see the stars from the Earth. They can see the planets from the Earth. In space, there is no atmospheric interference. We have no atmosphere at all in space. We just see the stars beautifully. From the moon has no atmosphere. So the moon also has no atmospheric interference. You can see the bloody stars from the moon. Every single fucking one of them. And I'll tell you what, they would be so, so beautiful and bright. It would be an incredible sight. It would be like, for example, a Milky Way. Okay? It has 250 billion stars in the Milky Way. Some people think there could be up to 400 billion stars. So you're telling me from the moon you can't see a single bloody star? I'm sorry, but you'd be able to see all of them. It would be the most incredible sight. You would see literally billions and billions of stars, which we can't see from the Earth because the atmosphere interferes with the optics and our ability to actually see through the atmosphere of the Earth. But on the moon, there's no atmosphere, okay? You would see all of the stars. It would be a beautifully amazing sight. Incredible. Why were there no fucking stars in any of their images? Their video footage, their photographic footage from the Hasselblad 630 cameras that they were using, which were single reflex, beautiful, very expensive camera, but you could see no stars. My God, NASA. Oh, what the fuck. Okay, we can see no stars. Also, in one of the images from the moon which I picked out, it's actually not an image which is really put out on Google very much. It was only by a matter of luck. I was going through images of rocks and stuff from the moon which they'd taken photographs of with their cameras. And I pressed view related images. And I pressed review related images again. I did that about 3 or 4 times and I got to one particular image. Now it's very strange. I was looking at this rock, and on the left hand side of the rock there was a C carved into it. And I'll show you again what it looked like. This rock was here. And it was just like that. In this corner of the rock there was a C, a very definite C carved into that rock. Now, on film sets, it's a thing that everybody knows that directs films or produces films. They know that we have props. The props are the images that we use in films. They have fake guns, that's a prop, etc. Rocks, they're props, okay? They're made by polystyrene and stuff to look like rocks. They're all painted and stuff. And you have little numbers or little letters put on them. What this does, it indicates the prop number. So why would a fucking rock on the moon have a C carved into it? That's another very strange one. Why would they do that? They wouldn't, because it was a film prop. Filmed in a film studio. Did you know that NASA had their own film studio and they made more films between 1961 and 1968 than all of Hollywood combined? Very interesting fact. They had a very large film studio set up. Why would they have this film studio set up? I wonder why. Strange that, isn't it? Obviously they had the set up basically to film the moon landings in 1969. Everybody was saying, oh, blah, 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 oh, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, all sat down on our televisions. I don't really remember. I was probably, how old was I then, 69? 6. I don't really remember. I remember something about it, but anyway, it was all black and white television. One small step for man, one giant lie for mankind. Not one giant fucking leap. The biggest lie ever told. For example, there's a C carved on that, which was a prop. Also, with the cameras, I don't know if I can't explain it to you very well, but with the Hasselblad cameras that we're using, they're a single reflex camera and they have little crosses. Yep, they use these crosses to judge distance when they're actually filming anywhere. And excuse me for a second, I'll do a very quick example for you. This, when you see the photographs, for example, you have the moon, you have the thing, you've got the lunar lander here. Yeah, lunar lander, and you have these little crosses, a little cross in front, and this was very strange, ladies and gentlemen. I'll try and explain it to you. This diagram, okay, we have little crosses on the film, which actually helps to judge distance. And we have one there, obviously, in front of the lunar module, and we have one here, which is actually behind the lunar module. How does that cross, to judge distance, get behind an object? NASA physics again. Impossible. It doesn't bloody happen. You've got the cross here. You've got the cross here on the film, which you can see because it's actually in front of the objects, and then you have a cross behind an object. This here, this cross. How the hell does that happen? Impossible. These crosses are put there on the film to judge distance. You cannot have this cross behind an object. It's fucking impossible. It never happens that way. It's like having a cross, behind me there. You can't see it because it's hidden behind. So, this is impossible again. Now, there are so many different things which, we need to be that we need to be aware of, because basically the stuff that's happening on the moon at the moment, the photos that were taken at different locations, for example. Now, this is another one which I found a little bit weird. We had one photograph which was taken at one location, and I'll do a quick diagram to explain to you exactly what I mean about that. There were photographs taken at different locations, but they had the same backdrop, the same mountains, the same hills, the same thing. So basically, if I do a quick thing for you, like this. So we have this backdrop. Okay, and I'll do the same again, repeat it. Like this. So, we have some rocks here, some rocks, some rocks, lots of stuff. So, we have this. Okay, here's the backdrop of the moon with the mountains and stuff. And another photograph was taken, I think about 5 or 6 kilometers away from that area, with the same backdrop, exactly the same, no difference, except they just put some rocks in the foreground. Yeah, very strange. So we have all of these photographs that were taken. The backdrop is exactly the same topography, same mountains, the same hills in the background, taken in completely different locations, 4 or 5 kilometers apart, exactly the same background, but in the foreground they'd put different rocks in there, they put some other bits and pieces in there and stuff to say that that this was what happened, this is a different place, when actually it's the same place, they just altered the foreground, the background was still the same. It's a typical film set. You don't change the background on a film set, the backdrop, okay? The only time you change a backdrop is to have a completely different set of scenery, but they didn't do it that way. They really fucked up. They're really fucking stupid. All of the stuff in the moon landings, I think there's way too many discrepancies. The shadows were the definite giveaway for me. There were multiple shadows coming from all different directions, so that suggested to me there were multiple light sources. And I don't understand how. I don't understand how they could have had multiple light sources unless there were multiple lights everywhere to cast all these different shadows all over the fucking place, which would have been possible because basically the sun is a constant light source there, and that doesn't change. Obviously, the sun doesn't move around for at NASA's convenience to move all these shadows in different directions. It just doesn't work that way. The thing with with this, which was very unusual, which is basically a studio light in the visor here on the right hand side of the visor of Neil Armstrong. It happened because it was actually a reflection of a film light from the studio. Because basically all of the moon landings, all of this stuff was faked. It was actually filmed in a very large film studio at NASA's facility. They have a very large film set there. And as I mentioned, they have filmed literally hundreds and hundreds of films at NASA between 1961, 62 to 69. I think, and into the very early 70s, but they produced more films than Hollywood did in that particular time frame. So that goes to show you how many films that they're doing, how many rehearsals that they did. And eventually, they must have filmed this literally dozens and dozens of times before they actually got the footage which they were going to release to the general public to lie about the moon landings. Yeah, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Well, actually, it's one small step for man, one giant lie for mankind. I'm also going to go into another video at some time about the International Space Station and how that particular atmosphere that they work in, the environment they work in affects them on a daily basis, what it does to the human body, how it affects the muscles, how even the simplest of tasks are extremely complicated in a zero-G environment. I will go into that in another video. But anyway, MC James J, this video is for you, my friend. Enjoy, share, please subscribe, mate. Yeah. If you want any more videos, if you want to have any more videos of any subjects, if anything you'd like me to do a video about, please, mate, let me know. I'm more than happy to do it for you. Physics is a passion for me. I love it. I love to disprove these fucking lying motherfuckers, because that's what they are. So, if you want me to do any more videos on any subjects at all, drop me an email, let me know, and I will get onto it right away. Pass it on to your friends. If your friends would like me to do any videos about any particular subject, any controversial subject, i.e. flat earth theory as well, that's something I can definitely give you some very good relevant information about. I will quite happily do that as well. So, MC Jamie J, thanks for the suggestion. This video is for you, my friend. Have a good day. Take care of yourself, buddy. Bye.